Perfect. Yeah, well, Scott, Justin, appreciate you guys having me on, and yeah, look forward to spending some time with you. I guess my background, I've kind of had a lot of different hats I've worn over the last couple of years, in particular. But I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and basically ended up playing for my father at Ohio Wesleyan University and in Columbus, Ohio, or just north of Columbus, Ohio, and who's now the all-time winningest soccer coach in the history of college soccer, which is um, pretty impressive. Obviously, I don't think I'll ever catch him for sure, or many people. But so I spent 4 years playing for him, and then I had a good experience. I went to Salt Lake City, played there, kind of in the reserve league for a year. Went to Iceland, played there for a little bit, in Germany for a little bit. Really trying to more extend my career as long as I could until jumping into what I really wanted to do, which was coaching. And I think that was something I always wanted to do. Obviously, growing up with my dad and growing up on a soccer field, I knew from an early age, in particular, that's what I wanted to do. So even when I was in Salt Lake or overseas, I was always writing down the sessions and the way people, dealt with players, especially when I was spent the year in Salt Lake. It was interesting because you had, Eddie Popes and Jeff Cunningham's and Jason Kreis's and, some big personalities. And it was interesting to see, how the staff dealt with that. After that, I went to Wake Forest University in 2007, and I started as the volunteer assistant coach there, which I've heard that they've done away with since then. I think you can now pay volunteers at the Division I level, and they're like a third assistant now. But at
Hmm.
that point, you sign for $0, and you make money on camp, and you do youth sessions in the evening, and you try to get your way in there, which I did. So I spent 2007 to 2015 at Wake Forest University, and my first year we won the national championship. So I thought, I was like, wow, coaching's easy. You go in for a year and you win the championship. This must happen every year. And was very fortunate to work for Jay Vidovich there, who's now at University of Pittsburgh. And I think we went to three Final Fours, and we had 15 or 20 guys drafted in the MLS. And I recruited probably the most famous kid to come out of college, Jack Harrison, from high school to Wake, and then I left before he got to Wake. I went when Jay Vidovich went to Portland. He wanted to take a jump to see what the next level was like, and he went to Portland and took that leap of faith and tried to get into the MLS. And for one reason or another, it didn't work out, and he went back to college. I went a different direction and went to the Columbus Crew with a really tremendous staff at the time. And when I was there, I knew the staff was good. I didn't understand how maybe good it would be. It was, Nico Estevez, who's now the head coach of Dallas, to Josh Wolf, who's in Austin, Pat Onstad, who's, obviously doing great things there. Asher Mendelson is with Pat in Houston. And then you got Greg with the national team, and, a really impressive staff he put together. And it was really good learning environment. I spent 3 months there. It was a lot shorter than I thought it would be. I got a call from John Harkes, the former national team player, and I recruited his son Ian to Wake Forest and coached him at Wake Forest, and he went on to win the Matt Herman Trophy. So John and his wife Cindy and I became very close, and he calls me out of the blue and he says, would you like to start a professional soccer team with me in Cincinnati? And at that point, nobody had any idea what was about to be brewing in the Queen City. And, so John and I went in there, put a team together from scratch. At that point, we were kicked off in the USL Championship, and we finished third in the league, in our first and only year. And it was an incredible experience. I was his assistant. Him and I put the team together from scratch. And then, then we made a decent little run there. But the crazy thing was we had crowds of, 20,000 in pouring rain. And then we played Crystal Palace in a friendly match, and we sold out a 36,000 seat stadium to, watch a USL game, which was, at that point, just unheard of. So that for us, it was a tremendous experience. And then, after a year, there was some, politics involved, and, John went one way, and I ended up getting offered the academy director position at DC United. in 2017, which I took, and at the same time I coached as well, because for me I couldn't stop coaching because that was really my true passion. When you start getting into the academy director role, there's a lot of politics, a lot of political, a lot of different um, administrative tasks, recruitment tasks, which are great, but my passion's always been coaching. And we had some pretty good success. Had a lot of kids go to different top universities, and had a lot of kids go the homegrown route, including like Kevin Paredes, who's recently named the U.S. Soccer's Young Player of the Year, to Griffin Yao, who's in Belgium, and Brian Ko and Ted Pietro, and even like an Adam Lundegaard, who hasn't gone pro yet, was the captain for Clemson, and winning the national championship this past season. So had some tremendous players come through there. And then in 2019, I just finished my UEFA B license, and I got a call to take over Loudoun United, which was and basically until this year the second team for DC United. So it was really a continuation of what I was trying to start in the academy, of helping players develop and grow and get to where they want to go, but in that professional realm of between an academy level and a DC United, MLS level, which is a big jump for kids to jump in. And then, that brings me 4 years later, and still allowed in here, and still trying to learn, get better. I've taken my UEFA A since then. I'm currently in my US Soccer Pro license, and still trying to help players get to where they want to go, and trying to continue to grow on my journey as well.
Man, that's a
So that was a long-winded answer. So that probably ended the whole show right there, right?
yeah, we're done now. All right, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, great talking.
Well, there's a lot of directions here. I mean, what did you enjoy the most? I mean, you've been a college player, college athlete, win the pros, and scout, and now you're a head coach. I mean, I would imagine having control is going to be the exciting one. I've loved being a head coach the most. But you've been in a lot of different places. What has been like? Oh man, I really enjoyed my time there, and kind of like what's the rationale there? Why did you enjoy that the most?
Yeah, I don't think there's been really one that I've enjoyed the most. I think they've all brought different parts to my growth and where I am. I think when you're an assistant coach, whether that was at Cincinnati or Wake Forest, it's great because you don't have the pressure that you do as a head coach. You don't you're not the one criticized for making the wrong decision, or bringing in the wrong player or different things there, but you get to run training sessions, and you are a little bit more free to really focus on the soccer side and be that part. When I think when I look at being the head coach here is great, but there are also hurdles here, because you're navigating as a second team. You're always navigating between DC United and the academy. And what does the first team manager want? And if he takes calls me on a Friday night at 8 p.m. and he says, I want Ted Pietro or Jackson Hopkins or whoever, they take him, and there's nothing you can do about it except for adapt and try to do the best you can. And it comes with at the end of the day, fans, the league, most people don't care, because it's did you win, did you lose, and
Right.
it's the reality of the business. But I do enjoy having more control. I do enjoy different parts. So then the playing part, I always love the game, which is I think why we collectively on this call and people listening are involved in the game at any level, right? You love the game for what it is, no matter how great you are or how far you go. It's the common theme between a Christian Pulisic and a guy playing at Christopher Newport, Ohio Wesleyan. They love it, right? And it's one gets paid a little bit more and has a little more pressure, but the reality is the same, that there is a love for it. So I don't think I can look at one particular moment and say that was the greatest job or whatever. And then I also take I have three really big mentors that I learned from as well. The first being my father, and I don't think he's obviously just written a book, but I think he could write a lot more in terms of what he's given to the game and to individual players. And he was on the forefront of really for coaching, for coaches, on the forefront of the mental side of the game and mental performance and goal setting. He's been doing that since the 80s. A lot of people nowadays, and he's done a really good job valuing the person over the player, which is a really good message there. Then when I went with Jay Vidovich at Wake, it was like a master class of training soccer and putting together a game identity and a philosophy and implementing it into the field. And, he was honestly the best I've seen to this day, including pro coaches on the field, and, then John Harkes is, very different, where he's the big personality, and he's a tremendous man manager and people. And, he can get another 10 to 20% out of people just from a conversation. And his optimism and his ability to influence a team to really run through a wall for him. And that was probably the first time I learned really what a man manager is. And when people use that term, John was a key one. And obviously, he comes from a line of, Bruce Arena and that kind of group, which is known for man management, but you don't really know it until you see it. And you're like, that makes sense. So that's, I've learned so much and grateful for the different stops and it has led me here. And I'm excited to see, where this year goes in my career and my journey. And, if I can learn as much as I have since 2007 in the next 16 years, that puts me at 56. I'm still 20 years younger than my dad. And he's still going. So it gives me some hope.
You'll still only have half the wins he has.
I don't know if I'll even get there, but
Goodness.
Yeah.
I told someone the other day, I think Steve ended up with close to 300. I was like, I don't think I'm like your record's safe. I'm not making it that long. Don't worry. I'm thinking about your first week at Columbus Crew with that amazing staff that you were talking about. And I mean, you go to your first meeting, you're probably like, I'll just take notes, guys. I'm not going to say anything unless you call on me. I mean, with those many guys, what did you pick up there? What was wow, what was the theme of just all those great guys that ended up being head coaches at the highest level? I mean, what did you pick up there that you could give to people?
Yeah, I think, and I didn't really list Greg in that group as one because I was only there for 3 months. I honestly, I would have loved and been really happy staying there for 6 years with that group. I mean, It was really a good group. And my role when I was with them was basically overseeing the U23 team and helping scout for the draft and preparing that. And then I was going to help in the academy and do some different roles there. But I think when I looked at that staff, I think one was, I was really impressed by how Greg operated a staff in terms of specific roles, responsibilities. And I think he did a really good job with that in terms of the players as well. The players knew and the staff knew, here's my role, here's my responsibility. If it, does it go right? Does it go wrong? If it goes wrong, well, I was told what it was, and his expectations and his standards never really slipped to what he was doing. I think when you're in the day-to-day in a professional soccer team, there's so much going on between individual egos and contract negotiations and scouting players, and then that doesn't even include on the field preparing for Red Bull. So I think when you're managing all that stuff, I think he did a tremendous job delegating and really using the staff to the best of his ability in terms of allowing a Josh Wolf or a Nico to teach and implement and put their stamp and their game model together, was really, really good. And his game model and the way he wanted to play at that time, the way he could articulate it and simplify it to players was really, really impressive. And when I look back at that, it was, the attention to detail, the simplicity in which he talked and could relay it was really, really impressive. And I think it was just a good group of humans too. When I still talk to most of them or text here and there, it's like they're just good people, and I think that's why they're doing so well in their careers. They truly are good people, and they believe in doing something one way. And most of them, have succeeded in some level in playing a certain philosophy and a team that wants to play, and they all kind of have that in them in different kind of capacities.
Yeah. No, that's great. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about Loudoun. This podcast originally started as a, we wanted to really help kids for the recruiting process and finding a good home, and that's definitely morphed. I mean, you're not a college coach. We're talking about the pro environment here. So it's kind of twofold. How are you creating your Loudoun roster? How you create, how does that look? Where does that come from? I'm sure there's ties to DC or everything that you've gone in the past. And then what's the college landscape look like for you? Are you getting kids from school? Are they a couple years removed? Are they going through a different pro bracket and then coming to you? Are they drafted and then they play for you before going to MLS? And, kind of how's it all tied together, starting with your roster and then mixing in the college landscape with that?
Yeah, I think it's important, and I tell players this, especially when I was in the academy. There really is no one pathway to being a pro. Everybody wants to be a pro, and I think people have different journeys to get there. Some might be you skip college and you go to an MLS team and you go right away. Others might be, I always use like an Ian Harkes, for example. Like you go for 4 years and then you go pro after, and you have a degree from Wake Forest, and then he goes to Europe and he's still playing in the MLS. And I think when you still look at the quality of kids and players in college, it's still a really, really high level of what they're doing. Our makeup of our team this year. So in the past, it's been more of what does Wayne Rooney or Ben Olsen or Hernan, who do they want to send to us, and then we kind of build it around it, or who are the top academy kids, and kind of plug holes around it. This year, we tried to put together really 21 to 22 professional players, and then try to really help integrate 2 or 3 academy kids in terms of what we're looking to do. Our makeup is mostly, I'd say, the kids have spent some time in college in this current roster, because I think it's important, the maturity level of helps the maturity and the growth of what they're doing. Some of the players we got through, like, when I was helping do the draft with like DC United, a lot of times we'd be eyeing players for Loudoun. So whether that was like an Aiden Rocha who came from Georgetown, or Alex Nagy, University of Vermont, these are guys, Sophie and Jafal, like these are guys that we identified as really top college kids that, okay, maybe make DC, maybe not, maybe grow into something down the road and can become something, and so that's why we still have an Alex Nagy. And then, I've used quite a few of my connections in terms of, people I trust, and in terms of how do I evaluate who the person is first before you look to get, a player. I think it's so important when you look at building a culture and an environment, is who is the person and how do they fit and what are their ambitions. So when I look at like our makeup of our team, I think we've got 3 young guys from Stanford, and so obviously I talked to Jeremy Gunn on that. I've got 2 guys from University of Pittsburgh, and so Jay's obviously giving me information on who these people are. We've got guys that spent time at FIU, University of Pennsylvania, UConn, St. John's, Notre Dame. We've kind of circled the wagon of guys that have had experience in the pros, have maybe had something that didn't work out and had to fight a little bit of adversity and try to find their way in. But the first thing we always look for is, who are they as a person? What are their ambitions? What do they want to do in the game? And how can we help them get there? And then from there it becomes, okay, can we fit them into the roster budget wise, et cetera? But I'd say 80 to 90% of our current roster has some type of college experience.
Okay. Yeah, that's that's always curious for us. Obviously we're Division III, so the pro angle isn't discussed as much, but a lot of the Division I kids and a lot of kids that I even recruit talk about pro soccer and what that looks like. And we have sent kids abroad to play in Australia and Sweden, and so I'm just curious how that looks for you guys. It looks like yours is more going through the draft and going through kids on that route. Do you have tryouts? That sounds funny to ask that type of question. Like, do you have anything like that?
Yeah, we do. We ran one about a week ago. We basically had, talking to different agents, talking to different coaches. We had 2 days. We had one day that was 80 kids that it was wide open to anybody that wanted to join. And then we had a second day where we basically vetted probably 20 to 25 guys that we knew through coaches or agents. And then we added 5 from the open tryout, but in the combine, or the second day, we probably had 60 to 70% were college. We had, guys that are, top Division III All-Americans to, Ohio Wesleyan's goalie came down to, we'll take a look at anybody because you really never know, where they come from. I remember when we were at Cincinnati, John and I, signed one of my dad's players, Evan Lee, who's, still playing at Greenville, and I think he's their captain and MVP and doing quite well. So, you just never know where players come from, and you never know what their situation is. And to say someone plays at an Ohio Wesleyan or Christopher Newport and, we're not going to take a look is wrong, because the reality is there are so many players everywhere, and it's important to never close the door on what a player can become.
It's interesting what you said about there's so many pathways. You look at the other sports, there's pretty much, it seems like there's one route, like the NFL, you got to go to college, go to the draft. And I'm sure that there are guys that you could pick up off the street that have made it, but most of the guys go through the exact same pathway. But in soccer, you're right. I feel like you can find a kid anywhere. I mean, it's just that type of sport. Shifting gears a little bit here, the college calendar. What are your thoughts with that? Because there's a big discussion for a while there of making it year round. It's going to help kids become more professional. I think that was the main goal. Obviously coaches wanted to coach more. It's such a rat race. We had a big discussion yesterday on the podcast about how the college game, the season itself is like 3 months and it's go, go, go. You got to win immediately. Here's your guys. In 14 days, you're going to play a game that's going to possibly make or break you making the NCAA tournament or not. I mean, that's how wild and just insane it can be versus your model, the professional model where it can go, 12 months, 11 months, you could space it out. You could actually really create a pro environment. So if you don't mind, kind of chat about what that college calendar looks like versus yours and kind of the hope there and how it might help. I mean, is there anything you've seen there?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of doing it. The year-round calendar. I think when, especially coming from like a Wake Forest, who's you look budgetary wise, is stadium wise, infrastructure, it has more than a lot of USL championship teams.
Right.
In terms of budgets, money, resources. I talk to these guys and some of these players. They charter planes to games, right? It's like you go from Winston-Salem to South Bend on a chartered flight, and you're living like a MLS player. You're living like a top end guy. Where USL, you're still, going around. So I think college soccer is missing the boat in terms of being a really, really relevant, even more relevant piece of the infrastructure of American soccer. I think when you look at the stadiums, when you look at the fan bases, when you look at, when I watch like an MLS Next Pro game, for example, and it's a younger league and they're trying to build that, but the fans for a lot of these teams are 500-600 people, 1,000 people, and you go to a UVA on a Friday night against Duke, and you're getting 6,000-7,000 people. It's and you go to College Park right here, and it's Sash has his little fan club behind the goal, and they're yelling at the goalkeeper. I mean, those atmospheres you can't replicate in some of these like reserve leagues and whatnot. So I think college soccer has a really huge opportunity, but I also think if they don't take it sooner than later, they'll miss the opportunity, because you have the MLS Next Pro coming, you have USL expanding, you have USL League One, and I think it's important where if they could do it, it could be a really even better, like if they did it the right way, where it's year round and you don't have many midweek games and you're able to really develop players and train, and you don't risk injury, and you don't have spring where you have 5 games, 6 if you have an international team, it becomes a really viable option for MLS teams to put players in college. It really does. Because you can't replicate that, in some of these leagues. And I think it would help everybody. And I just remember, like our I think we talked about before, was, preseason's 10 days or 12 days, and it's it's scary. I mean, there is a risk for injury, and there is a risk of struggling in school academically. And to be honest with you, we found at Wake Forest, and even myself at Ohio Wesleyan, I struggled more in the spring with academics than I did in the fall, because it was less structured. And it's you have more free time, and you're kind of like, well, what do I do now? And you're like, well, it's when you're on a schedule and you're doing things over and over, I think it's a really important time for growth for people and for players. So I'm hoping it goes through. I don't think it will, but I'm hopeful it does. I think there's a lot of really big positives that could come from it. That would be, I'm pushing people every time I talk to college coaches for sure.
Yeah, and of course you've got how many variables and how many unknowns. I mean, like look at the country in general. I guess sort of changing a little bit now, but the mindset's always been, well, you got to get a degree, and so all right, well these kids got to go get a degree, but then they got to pay for it. So now you're paying to be a professional player. So you got some oddities there. I know that you have the scholarship option at the highest levels, of course, but it's not for everybody. And then no sport does year round. And what's the NCAA going to do, basically, is the question mark here. And so it just seems like, because even if you had all the right answers, you're asking this big entity, the NCAA, to say, yeah, let's do this that we've never done for anybody ever before, and let's completely change our model. And they haven't done that in anything else. I just can't imagine that. And then you got the unknowns with all the conference realignments, the big question marks going on with NIL and the amount of money being spewed into especially the big dogs, the footballs, the basketballs. And so I agree with you 100%. I think that maybe the last opportunity is coming, because it just seems like something's going to happen with this NIL bubble, with all the conference realignment, with the big Alabamas and the Dukes and the basketballs and the footballs. It just kind of totally separate. I mean, how different are those programs than Ohio Wesleyan and CNU soccer? And we're under the same umbrella. I mean, how wild is that? And so it just seems like something's going to happen soon. And maybe the window then shows up for us to say, all right, well, now all these Division I kids somehow are getting full rides. Let's partner up with some professional thing going on at the same time for the top 50 schools, or, something might happen soon. It just seems like we're all looking around in the college world like, all right, there's no way we could stay the exact path we're all going right now. It just seems too volatile, and something's going to happen. And I think you're right. I think for soccer, there has to be, a few clear paths to get there. I mean, there's definitely any way, which is great, but I think that the college landscape could be way better to help out professional soccer, like it does in football, like it does in baseball, like it does in basketball. I think you're right. I think that there's some boat that we're missing to make soccer much more of a viable option for a pathway to the pros.
No, 100%. And I think it's going to be interesting, like you said, to see where it plays out, especially when you get like a Stanford in the ACC or something, right? It's like, how is that going to work where you're traveling cross country and
Right.
and doing some different things there? And there is a huge opportunity, and I'm hopeful that the NCAA will help and kind of push it in the right direction, because it would be a really good landing spot for so many people. And the number one complaint I always hear, because I used to be in these surveys and stuff that players would do and coaches would do, and the number one complaint of like kids always wanting to go pro early is, well, the spring, right, or the summer, we're limited at what we can do. And the number one thing about, okay, coaches, well, your spring and your summer, you're limited at what you can do. And it's hard. And the one I always even said was like an easy one to fix would be like, so like I'll use the kid Adam Lundegaard from Clemson. Like he played for me before he went to Clemson. He played actual matches for Loudoun United. Then he went to Clemson, and because he's enrolled in Clemson, like if I wanted him to come and play, and Mike Noonan wanted him to come and play 5 games in the summer, he no longer can and keep his eligibility. So it's like such a strange one where here he is. Like imagine if you went to Clemson and you play your 25 games in the fall, you play your 6 in the spring, but then you get 10 games over the summer in a USL 1 or USL championship team or MLS Next Pro team. Like you just added 10 massive opportunities for these kids without even moving the schedule. But for some reason that has never crossed the plate as well. And I'm like, well, that could be an easy one to change in theory.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, my son did an internship over the summer and got paid for it as a Division I athlete. I mean, what's the difference, really? I mean, still getting paid as a college
I'm not even talking paying the kids. The kids would play for free. If you could give them 10 games and cover their expenses, it's like, Why? Well, I don't see why can he play 15 games for me before Clemson, but once he enrolls, he can no longer even play in any games, but he can train every day. And you're like, well, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, absolutely right. Cheese, you got more?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Ryan, I want to go back to playing for your dad and, what that was like, how you guys turned it on, turned it off, dad versus coach and that sort of thing. I know it was a little while ago, but I'm sure you have some fond memories of growing up and then playing for him in college and, maybe some good stories of getting benched or getting yelled at or, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. I mean, I think it was one of those ones where, first of all, when I was looking through the process of some different things and different schools and opportunities, when I grew up, Ohio Wesleyan was really all I wanted to do. But obviously, when you step on a campus and your dad's the coach and different things, it does make things different. And so when I asked, at the time, like Todd Yeagley was playing for the Crew and Jerry's a friend of my father's. And, so I had a chance to speak with Jerry and Todd for a little bit before really making the decision. And, both of them were like, it was the best decision we ever made. Was it the easiest? No, but it was the best decision, that we ever did. And when I look back on it, I think the same thing. It wasn't always easy. And I think it's really difficult when you're dealing with a kid who's 18 years old at the time or 19, and you're wondering why you're the coach, your dad is harder on you than he is on other people, or he's benching you for something that the other guy next to you's done 5 times and you turn the ball over once and you're off and you're like trying, but it's hard as an 18-year-old to really process it. So I don't think I fully understood it probably until I was like 21 or junior, senior. Then I was like, it makes sense of why he was being harder on me. And then it makes even more sense now when I'm reflecting on the whole thing. I'm like, I was like, that's leadership, 201 at that point, but I didn't understand it because I was too young and naive and too trying to figure out myself and how to get involved. But yeah, he was definitely harder on me, which I appreciate now. At the time was difficult. For me, we had some tremendous moments. Like my senior year, we went 22-0, and I think we didn't end up making really a run in the tournament, but we went 22-0, and we ended up at that point. He's won so many games, I can't remember. I think it was his 500th win was like our 22nd win, so we had to go perfect in order for me to be a part of one of his 100 wins or whatever. And me, when I look back, that was a really special moment to, celebrate that, to win a conference championship and do it all together on the same night was great. We he's a big proponent of taking the teams to Germany and doing some different things there. So when I reflect, that was, and I think when you ask 90% of Ohio Wesleyan players that, the Germany trip is always like one of their top ones there. And then I think just the sense of family and community that he put together. I remember I was in Sarasota recruiting at the Academy Showcase in 2012 when he won the national championship in San Antonio, and we were waiting to see if he won the semis, and Jay Vidovich, who was a coach at Pitt, was also OU alum and some different things there. So once he won the and obviously Division III, you don't get the day off in between; it's back to back. So he wins the game, and we immediately booked tickets to fly out there, but not only did we fly out there, but there was like 200, 250 alums there, like that didn't have a kid playing, didn't have a, they had skin in the game, which was the jersey, which was, incredible. So I think when I look back at that, that was like my first real like, aha, like this is a culture, like this is like a true environment of like, and at that point it was, I was 4 years into my coaching career. So I was, and I was probably a second assistant at that point. And then I'm like, oh, well, here he is, at that point, I think he's 46 years into it or something. So at that point you would call it, 34. I mean, when you have that many people come back into, San Antonio, which is not an easy place to come to. And all of a sudden it's, altogether, it was unlike anything I've ever seen in terms of, how to build, like, this is what a culture is. So, to this day, it's still, something I'm very proud of, that I played for him. And, I'm very fortunate. I, scored a lot of some goals and assists and had a decent career. But, I think the biggest one was, a lot of what I've taken in my journey to coaching. And then, some of the great milestones, the trip to Germany, and then the aha of what culture and environment is moment was, something that will stick with me, to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, we've joked around a little bit about how many wins he's had, and I mean, how do you ever pass that? I think it's 762 now, and just to put that in perspective, if you win 20 games a season, you played college soccer. I mean, how many did you win your national championship year at Wake? Around 20, probably
22,
right.
yeah.
But that was to win the national title. I mean, that's just that's how hard it is. You get 20 games total, and it's soccer. It's hard to win, and
Correct.
you would need 38 of those seasons of 20 wins, and you're still a little short of 762. I mean, it's just a bizarre way to think about it. I mean, I'm 5 years into my career, and I'm like, man, I think I have to be like 140 before I pass him. Probably. I mean, that's just it's unreal.
It's incredible, and like I said, the fact that I get these calls, after a loss or something, and they'll be like, "Hey, am I too old to connect with these guys?" I'm like, well, yeah, this is your second loss. You're 15-2. I go, I think you're doing all right.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I taught him how to use Instagram, so now he's now he's on top of the world. Now he's going to coach for another 10 years.
Oh man. Man, that's incredible.
That's great.
One of my favorite things about your dad is when he came out here to play us one year, they had just won, was it 2011? What was the year they won the second national title? 2000.
It was either 11 or 12. I can't remember which one it was.
Well, we were their opening game the next year. We'd scheduled it earlier in the season, and then they won the national title, and we finished in the Elite Eight. And so we were like,
that's right. Yeah.
We're opening with the number one team in the country right here at home. I mean, it was a huge crowd. What an awesome environment. We were so pumped. He doesn't travel with the team. Brandon travels with the team.
Yeah.
He flies in separately, rolls in, brings out his conductor chair. And I'm okay. I've got a ways to go as an assistant coach here. That's where I need to get to, conductor chair and the golf cart on campus. I mean, I haven't made it yet. No, not even close.
I think my mom even got his name embroidered in the back now. So
that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah, I couldn't pull it off. I'm like, I think you can only pull it off when you win that much. So
wow.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of people that like give some jokes, and like Chris Brown when I went up to a camp with him. There was John Moody at the time was at Berkshire, and we did a camp. And Xander Jones, who played for my dad, was at Salisbury at the point up in the Northeast. But we're all having dinner one night, and Chris Brown goes, I can't believe. He goes, the first game, same story. First game, he pulls out. He goes, he didn't even pull it out. He goes, he had 4 freshmen set up this conductor on the sideline, and then he gets in, and like everybody looks at him like he's like the king, and I'm like, well, he's won a lot of games, and
So what are you gonna say to him?
Yeah,
what are you gonna say to him? You're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
you can't. It's impressive. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Go back to the lesson, like you pointed out a few mentors, and the lesson that you learned from your dad was, player over or person over player. And talk about what that means to you, and how he exemplified that, and how you're kind of using that now.
Yeah, I think so. He again, and they've renovated like his office and stuff. Obviously, because he's been there longer than most of the school. But when I was there, and in the past, he used to have his office and then like a big conference room in the middle, and basically it would be an area where the soccer players would go in between classes and hang out and catch up and this and that. But he would always be really good about grabbing a player and having a 10-minute chat or a 5-minute chat and catching up on life. And I think that's important when, having worked in the university and having been 18 many years ago and that type of thing, is the the players are always going through something, whether that's something at home or a breakup with a girlfriend, or a bad grade on a test, or the expectations of parents, or whatever it might be. And he was always very good about finding what was going in somebody's mind, but more importantly, giving advice through his own lens and what he's been through to help and try to help, not motivate, but to help ease the player or give them guidance of where they can deal with different pains and traumas and different things that have happened, or something silly, and try to refocus and reframe. So I think that was always really big in terms of his culture and how he created it and bringing players in. I think the other one is, he always did a really good job of setting goals with players and sitting down with them and trying to help them map it out and, really get to the bottom of, season long goals, but more importantly, like the ones that I always thought were better than the season long goals were like the game goals, and setting up, how are you going to be successful today? And were you successful? Were you not successful? How can you, do that? And I think it's important where, what are the values, what are the different people and what they want to do. And I think he gives a lot of ownership to the players, and some we found out are not ready for it, and others are. But I think that's part of the learning lesson and the growth of why you have 250 people coming to San Antonio, Texas in a game. It's like they do have a sense of ownership and pride of what they're doing, and whether that's cleaning up trash around the now J. Martin Soccer Complex, or doing laundry. Like the players to this day still do the laundry for the team, and they clean up the locker room, and they have different crews that do it, and it's a all for one mentality. And I think he's always looked at who the person is, and then why are they struggling. And there'd be some games where he would play a guy probably longer than he should have, but then it'd come back and it'd be like, well, he's going through this, his mom is sick or whatever it is, and he's trying to give benefit of the doubt that way, or he's trying to do different things to support and give the person, or give him an extra bit of feedback on the field, or grab him aside. So like those type of things were always really unique about who he is, and I think how he got the most out of each person and player, and still has a relationship with most of them, even guys that, to be honest with you, like this can sound crazy, that he cut, or guys that only played a year, or guys that played two, like on it, they still call, or they still have, like there's a guy in Leesburg actually that like saw in the grocery store at Wegmans the other day, and I think he played 2 years, and he's like, I still follow Ohio Wesleyan soccer, and I follow your career, I follow your dad's career, and I'm like, oh, that's strange, but I go, that's great. I mean, it really is different.
Yeah, it speaks to the impact, huh? That you're, yeah. Go ahead, Cheese. I see you chomping there. You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, the old Zoom, COVID days, mute.
Yeah. My guys are running back and forth. They're about to go to weightlifting, so it got pretty noisy in here. I totally spaced. No, I have nothing. I was writing notes. Like that's why one of my earlier questions was, what'd you learn over there? And here I am listening to you talk about your dad. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what Jay was doing. This is how I get my golf cart, So, no, I mean, what you talk about is that's why we do what we do, right? I mean, not many of us are getting rich doing what we do. We just we love the impact. We love being around these kids and at all the levels. I mean, we've all coached a little bit of club, a little bit of college, and I coached high school a little bit. You're now dealing with young kids in the pro levels. I mean, it's just there's more to it than just the game. And if you don't relate to them that way, it's going to be, it doesn't make it as fun. It's just a job at that point. And so, it's cool to think about, all the wins, all the fun stuff that your dad did. But at the same time, it's like that guy, when he goes, is going to probably have 10,000 people at this funeral, and they're all going to be ex-players. Like, oh man, just telling cool stories. And, that's just really, that to me is all of the success. That's the true measure of his success.
No, and I think when you look back, Division 3, Division 1, professional, international, it's like there's so many good coaches out there and good people out there that are doing a good job, and I think you hit it on the head there. It's like it always comes down to what is your why and why are you doing what you're doing, and I think that if you in my estimation, the people that I've mentioned in terms of my mentors or people that I really value what they do, it really comes down to, making a difference in a kid or a person's life and trying to be honest with them, help them improve. And it's the love of the game, and I think if you can accomplish those, and when I walk into work every day. Okay, can I be honest? Can I help this kid grow as a person or player and, have fun today? That's the reality. And whether that's Ohio Wesleyan or Greg at the national team or me at Loudoun or Nico at, FC Dallas, it really is the same, and I think it's, we all have different headaches that we all deal with. Your headaches are different than mine, and my dad's are different than his, that are different than Jay Vidovich's and John Hark's. But the reality is, if we stick to those principles as coaches, there's never really a truly bad day.
That's very true. Talk a little bit about shifting gears a little bit to a youth player, looking to go play in college, but has the ultimate goal of playing pro. And, what are some of the common attributes and habits that those kids have that are able to go from, playing at a club team their junior year through college and then to coming to play for you or beyond?
Yeah, I think when you first look at it, I think it comes down to before anything, it comes down to really how hard they want to work and how much they love what they do, and I think most people that I found that are successful going either from college to the pros or directly from, it's like, do they really love the game? And at that point, it means, are you willing to be resilient and stand up and go again when you're benched? Does it mean, when your number's not called, that you work extra hard that week when you get negative feedback or something that you don't want to hear, and because most of these kids across their whole life have always been told how good they are, when you're told, hey, yeah, your passing was poor, your way your final pass was really bad, we've got to improve this, here's some things we can do, are you willing to really work on it, listen to it, and execute it? So I think when I look at kids, and I always used to, when I was at Wake Forest, would always go look at the warm-ups, and it was almost a lot more important than it would be for really for the game, because you can see, what do they do when nobody's really looking? What is their interaction with their teammates? Is their interaction with the trainer? What are their interactions? I try to do the same here now when I look at a pro game, pro player. I'd like to go to trainings if I can, because for me, what are their habits? And I think when I look at players that have really either made it through college or gone to college and will make it afterwards, it really is that the common desire to succeed and to deal with adversity and setbacks. I think those are probably the biggest key traits that I can always take away for kids trying to make it. And I think it's important where kids have to also understand is, there are late developers, and there are guys that are more ready at 14 that don't make it at 18. And there are more guys that are, don't make it till they're 24. When you look at, the best example is, the U.S. goalkeeper, right? It's like, I think he gave up like 16 goals in, a high school game, and then he played at Fairfield, and, now he's in the Premier League, and say what you want about it, but, Matt Turner's a prime example of it. It's like, that really is a player that has not succeeded, given up 16 goals in one game, wasn't recruited, and he ended up making it. I think, you even look at basketball where, Steph Curry, when he was down in North Carolina, it's like, I showed it to my players the other day about what his potential, and it's like, well, he was underrated in almost every aspect of what he actually does well at this point in his career, that no one would have believed he would have made it. And he went through Davidson, which is not really obviously a basketball hotbed, but he ends up being one of the best players ever to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good messaging.
Yep. The other thing I was going to ask was about your other two guys that you listed as mentors, and kind of the same question that I asked about your dad, and the lesson that you learned, that you took away from each of those guys, Jay Vidovich and, I think you talked about like building team identity and how important that is. And then, relating it back to how does a kid evaluate a college program? How does that fit in culture wise, and how do you evaluate that? So kind of a two-part, like go back to the message that you learned and how you see that being played out in a program when a kid's looking at a college program.
Yeah, so I think when I look at like a Jay Vidovich, for example, I think on the field in terms of his style of play and the way he wants to attack, dominate games, and be a proactive team. I think when I look back at the attention to detail and training, especially on an individual level, was far above anything I've seen, honestly, to this day in the pro world when I go overseas, etc. When I look back at my notes that I took when I was with him, it really is like here is the attention to detail necessary to break down a team, an individual, a unit, and here's how you can really try to help them improve. And I think when you look at his track record of player development, first and foremost, obviously winning, he's been tremendously successful, but player development, I don't think there's a better coach that's put more players in the professional game than he has. And when you look at some of the guys, like we had a kid called Sam Fink who played for St. Louis FC for like 7 years. He was honestly a walk-on player, and he was one of the kids that I just talked about, similar to, he just loved the game. He was a junkie and would listen to everything you say, eat it up, and became a pro player. And at one point, I think his last year, he was U.S. Open Cup player of the tournament, for the lower divisions, and they went on a great run, so for him, it's like I still have notes and notes and notes of, okay, here's, what you're looking for, a team that presses, a team that doesn't, how do you build out, what does your structure look like? So he was meticulous in that. And I'd get texts at 4 a.m. and it'd be like a blog post of Bielsa trying to, get in behind a back three that, that doesn't like to press or doesn't like to build. So it'd be a little bit more direct, and he's working on how to spring in behind. So he was just a different way of thinking that really stretched you. And he would never give you the answers, which helped me as a coach. It frustrated me at the time, but he'd always be, well, what do you think first? And then you'd have to answer, and then it'd be a critique. And it was always like you always felt like you're being tested, which wasn't dissimilar to what Greg was like as well. When I did my job interview with Greg, he brought me into his room, like this office. Him and Asher were sitting there, and he goes, "How does the Columbus Crew press?" And he goes, "We're playing Red Bull, draw the press up on the board." And then, okay, we're playing, so-and-so on the weekend. Give me 3 exercises that you think will work and why, and what is the purpose of why you're trying to do it? And I was like, oh, wow, this is different. So I think like those two guys had a lot of that type of stuff in terms of, similarities. And I think when you ask about kids looking at different colleges, I think, so you got the NIL and different things that make it more difficult. But I think the best part about college coaches in this, or college players and college systems in this current landscape, is YouTube, internet, video. You can watch how a team plays in a matter of seconds. I can Google Christopher Newport 2023 goals on YouTube, and I bet I would find 12 videos or 15, not just from each goal. I'm sure you scored more than 12 goals, but you can go and see it in minutes, and you can say, well, I like the way they play here, I don't like the way they play there. And I think it's important to always ask, where do you see me and how will I fit in? And most importantly, it's like, I think players can ask coaches, where do you, how do you see me developing? How do you see me growing? And how can I become a better player under you? And then I think it becomes an open conversation for the player and the coach of, well, how do you receive criticism? How do you accept criticism and use it to develop? And I think that's probably a healthy way of looking at it. And I think the more you can have interactions with the coach and have a conversation, I think helps players understand what the next 4 years will be like.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great answer. I know it's been about an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. I know that you have other stuff to do today. So anything else to add, Ryan, before we get you out of here?
No, I would just, I would encourage players to, regardless of where they are right now, is to really invest in themselves as players and people. And when one door shuts, there's always other doors open as long as you're willing to work and become better for it. And I think that's where, I'm probably at this moment, I think one of the biggest proponents of college soccer in the professional game, and my belief of what the college system can do for a person and a player. And I think it's important that, um, players don't say just because I'm going to college, I'm done, or I can't go pro, or just because I went pro and it didn't work at my first club. It's so important where how do you handle adversity? How do you become resilient and always bet on yourself? So I just say, for young players and people out there, invest in themselves and bet on yourself. And I think it will go a long way to shape your career.
Awesome.
Hey, Ryan, what are you guys doing opening weekend in March? We're up there for the Loudoun Showcase. I was
Awesome.
hoping I can, if you guys are around, I was hoping I could swing by and spend some time with you guys in the office, kind of see how you guys do business.
Yeah, always open. March 16th is our home opener.
Oh, so you'll be home, you think, early March?
We'll be home. We'll be home early March. We're in San Antonio on the 9th, home on the 16th.
Fantastic. All right, I'll reach out leading up to that.
Yeah, shoot me a text. Always more than welcome to have you in, and whatever I can do to help. And yeah, please let me know.
Yeah, love it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Ryan, I can't thank you enough, and hopefully get you on here again. But best of luck to you this upcoming season and sorting all that out with the short lead up to the first preseason match.
Yeah. Now, well, it's, like I said, it's always a learning environment, and all you can do is see where you are on day one, and hopefully you're better by March 9th. That's the hope.
That's great.
Yeah.
But no, well, Scott, Justin, appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good seeing you.
Bye.
Take care.
He's good, man.